The last video that I did was all about the most dangerous band in the world, which, spoiler alert, it's about Hanatarash, a label that they've been given by so many people throughout the years, and I myself do agree with that label to them, considering that they got a bulldozer, or technically what it really was an excavator, and rammed it right through a venue's wall, endangered the lives of basically everyone that participated at their show, along with other dangerous antics. But what I was looking forward to when I uploaded that video with that title was, considering how consistent you guys are telling me about all this wild stuff, I got all these comments about other bands and artists with all these other wild stories I want to look into. But one that really stood out to me, hence why I'm doing a video about it today, is one of you guys told me about supposedly this being the only artist to be charged with crimes against humanity and was convicted for the incitement to genocide. That being all about Simon Bikindi. To give you a quick backstory, Simon Bikindi was a Rwandan musician who was quite a big name in his home country throughout the 80s and early 90s, so much so that his relevancy in Rwanda was equivalent to that for us of Michael Jackson. He got his start in the music business being a director, composer, and singer for a group called Irindiro Ballet. From what I was able to find, there wasn't much information about Irindiro Ballet other than when I searched it up here on YouTube, I came across one search result called Irindiro Amahoro, which, again, hopefully I'm saying any of this correctly, that it has Simon Bikindi's name credited in the description, so I'm assuming they're related. And if you want to check it out in full, I'll have a link provided in the description to this. But to summarize it in short, it's a style of music found within Rwanda that blends forms of modern-day hip-hop for its time in the 80s and early 90s with forms of old folk instrumentation, so this mixture of blending something modern and traditional simultaneously. Clearly this group's music hit the right notes with the right people, because it was being played everywhere in Rwanda, whether it be at bars, clubs, restaurants, on the radio consistently, to even at the point that they were so big that they were performing their music at weddings for government officials. Where this story takes a dark and twisted turn into the context for the title of this video is that on October 1st, 1990, the Rwandan Civil War started. Since I don't want to add another 20 minutes onto this video about the history of the Rwandan Civil War and where it stretches back decades prior to it to how this conflict started, I'll just give you a quick rundown and know that the Rwandan Civil War was a conflict between the Rwandan Armed Forces and the Rwandan Patriotic Front. What's really important to note here is that it consisted of primarily two ethnic groups, that being the Hutu, which is the majority, and the Tutsi, which is the minority. Like any other war, emotions were high, violence ensued, and racial tension was in turmoil to that of it being lethal. And as history has shown us time and time again, propaganda came forth. The propaganda presented to the Rwandan people mainly came from the RTLM radio station. This radio station, just simply nicknamed by some as Radio Genocide, played a vital role into the 100-day Rwandan genocide, as from 1993 up until July of 1994, it strongly encouraged the forms that we can consider as hate propaganda or hate speech towards the Tutsi people. If you want a small example of what the RTLM radio station sounded like, there are still clips archived, one of which being available here on YouTube, and I'll have a link provided in the description if you're curious to hear it. It only goes on for roughly a minute and a half long, and in this audio clip, you'll notice that they say the word cockroaches, or it's translated to such, and they're referring to the Tutsi ethnic group as cockroaches, stating that they're coming after them, they want to incite violence, and that they're not real Rwandans. It's important to note here that unlike today, where information is distributed through so many forms of media like internet, computer, television, phone, newspaper, the radio station, etc., when it came to Rwanda in the 90s, what dominated the airways for information being distributed was mainly the radio stations. Fast forward to April 7th, 1994, and this would be the start of the Rwandan genocide, a nearly 100-day slaughter of Hutu committing violent acts on the Tutsi. It's estimated that 500,000 up to 1.1 million people perished during the Rwandan genocide. And if it's true that 1.1 million is correct, it's also estimated that of that number, 800,000 of them were just solely Tutsi. And there's also reports that estimates somewhere between 250,000 to 500,000 women were sexually assaulted. And during that whole time, the RTLM radio station was broadcasting. During the radio broadcastings, it would be a mixture between speeches mainly inciting that of acts of violence to music. And the music that they played, 2 songs of which being done by Simon Bikindi. Of the 2 songs that were played on that station, the one that gets the most amount of attention for strongly inciting genocide was this song, which I don't know how to pronounce because I can't speak Kinyarwanda, but it translates to English to "I hate Hutus." Now, this may seem a bit confusing at first, considering that Simon Bikindi's ethnicity is Hutu, and that the Tutsi were the ones that were really affected by the Rwandan genocide. If anything, at face value, this song title seems a bit rebellious against the oppressors of the Hutu, but in actuality, what it's referring to by "I hate Hutus" is he's talking about the Hutus who are either moderate or sympathetic towards the Tutsi. There's a website that has the whole song with its lyrics posted, which I'll have a link provided in the description if you're curious to check it out for yourself. And if you're like me who only knows how to speak English, obviously use Google Translate and you can translate it and depict it for yourself what this song really means. This song goes on for roughly a little over 20 minutes long, and there's a lot of lyrical verses to go through, but one that really stands out to me that really showcases that he's pushing blame on Hutus that are sympathetic towards the Tutsi is this particular verse that goes, "I hate the Hutus. They despise each other so much. They think they are better than others. They even despise other Hutus. I hate the Hutus. The Hutus with big bellies. They are like the merchants. They like to be cheated. They live off being cheated. Who can blame you for that? If I hate those people, I will continue to hate them. God, we have a home in our country because they are so few. They are so few who are loyal." And this other lyrical verse in the same song that goes, "I hate the Hutus. They don't put another Hutu in the roof. They don't punish him like that. But let's keep the unity strong. If I hate those people, I'll live forever. If I hate those people, I'll live forever." Reading those lyrical verses and connecting it to the context of that of the Rwandan genocide, another thing to point out here that's a little bit odd is that supposedly he wrote these songs around 1992 before the Rwandan genocide happened. But what's weird reading about it is that he states that in that lyrical verse that he hates the Hutu that are in the roof or something like that, closely resembling that of like Hutus who are sympathetic to the Tutsi, that they would, give them shelter in their homes to hide them in the attics or in their buildings, same way as like some Germans were sympathetic to the Jews, that they would hide them in their buildings for safety, like with Anne Frank and such. So there's some similar connections there. And another verse where he says, "If I hate those people, I'll live forever," which seems really sinister to write within any context, considering the fact that a civil war is going on. But as I stated earlier, the lyrics are posted online and a link is provided in the description if you want to read it and translate it for yourself and make your own interpretation of it. But from what I've searched up, there's been a lot of universities who have tried to interpret it, and they all come to the same conclusion that when it comes to Simon Bikindi's lyrics on this particular song, he's trying to be as subtle as possible to put blame on the Tutsi. Fast forward to 2001, and that song was considered so hostile that, believe it or not, Simon Bikindi had charges against him for conspiracy to commit genocide. The prosecution cited that particular song with some of the lyrical verses that I brought up, along with others, stating that it was the incitement to that of genocide. But in Simon Bikindi's defense, this charge wouldn't stick. You see, Simon Bikindi's lawyers brought up the fact that since he's an artist, he has the freedom of expression and freedom of art. And because of that, all forms of art, regardless of what it is and how you look at it, is subjective. And it goes far beyond just the subjective viewpoint of if it's good or bad, but it's subjective as to how we understand and interpret it. So while you and I, the individuals at all these different universities and everyone else, can decipher it, pick it apart, and interpret it any which way possible, it just doesn't stick in court. So he never got charged for inciting genocide because of his music. However, what did lead to the conviction on the charges on the incitement to that of genocide is that on one of the radio broadcasting systems that he used for the RTLM, is that he stated at one point that to the Hutu people that they should go out and exterminate the Tutsis if they found them, referring to the Tutsis as snakes. So yes, as it stands right now, because of it being connected with the Rwandan genocide and how the courts were being done during that time with that event, is that as it stands right now, the only musician to be charged for the incitement of genocide is Simon Bickendie. So in 2008, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He would end up passing away in 2018 because of diabetes. He was 64 years old. A few things I need to bring up here is that while Simon Bickendie is the only musician charged with crimes against humanity, I don't think it's entirely his fault, because really to blame for one, I think the true villain here was that radio station broadcast of the RTLM, as they were just always pushing out hatred towards the minority group, and they were the one broadcasting that music. So again, really to blame here as the true villain is the RTLM radio station. The other component that's a bit more divisive here is that with all the court hearings that you can read about Simon Bickendie, is that Simon always proclaimed that he never had any hateful incentive in him. He's a really loving, caring individual, that he truly believed that he was an innocent man. The music that he created was meant to be more of like these anti-war songs to stop the violence from happening, and that even his wife, who there's an interview that you can read all about it, she being in the ethnic group of the Tutsi, and again, Simon Bickendie is a Hutu, which, you know, with the turmoil that was going on there, she even stated that Simon was never hateful, he was always caring, and that when it came to writing music for, you know, the government and for this radio station, is that he was more of an opportunist to further his career. Finally, the last thing that I came across relating to Simon Bickendie is that shortly after his death in 2018, his music was put out on a CD format called Music of the Rwandan Genocide. It's put out by this label called World Historical Recordings, with the goal of preserving, you know, historical audio. And what's interesting on the back is this little passageway that says, the only musical artist to be convicted during the criminal trials which followed the Rwandan genocide of 1994. Simon Bickendie is best known for his song, I Hate These Hutus, a song which condemned all Hutus who did not strike out against their Tutsi countrymen. During the genocide, the song was played on repeat by the propaganda radio station RTLM. The trial of Bickendie proved controversial as onlookers debated whether an artist should be prosecuted for his art. Ultimately, Bickendie's music output proved not to be a factor in the proceedings. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his other actions during the genocide and died before completing his sentence. In conclusion, with my final thoughts, a humongous reason I want to do this video is I just never thought I'd come across a story like this. You know, I wasn't aware of this happening, a musician going through this kind of trial. Yeah, I was aware of the Rwandan genocide, but not this being related to it. And I am, for one, that when it came to a video I did about a year ago, separating art from the artist, of about that art is a wild child, there should be no censorship, freedom of art all the time, that any type of expression or thought that you understand, agree with, or don't agree with, or don't even understand, should always happen in art. There should be absolutely no limits, because that's what art was meant to be. It's meant to be expression and emotion unapologetically all the time, no matter what. And this is a certain circumstance where it really challenged me a little bit with my own beliefs, because if it's all about emotion and expression, and your art, in this case with Simon Bickendy, is influencing people to do these ungodly, heinous things, where does it become a little bit, with that expression, guilty? And while he wasn't tried for his music, they tried to do it regardless. They attempted to. And that's where, again, I'm a little bit puzzled by this. And while my views at the moment right now are still firm with the idea of, again, no censorship, it should just be always free no matter what, I gotta admit, this is one of the first certain circumstances that it challenged me a little bit, and I'm just curious to know what you think of all of this that I presented to you. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, links provided to everything I discuss will be down in the description below. Really curious to know what you think of all of this, and like always, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. And like always, have a great day.